Next, we'll jump into the Nintex Workflow Designer. So before we jump into the actual designer, we have our workflow gallery. The workflow gallery is showing you the list of workflows that you have created as they're scoped to the list itself. You can also create workflows for the site, and that will allow you to access all the lists and libraries within the site. However, we're just going to create a list workflow scoped to this list. We haven't created one yet for this list, and that's why the gallery is blank, but we'll create a new one by clicking on Create List Workflow. Once we click on that, our Workflow Designer canvas loads. With Nintex Forms, we present to you a already built Nintex Forms canvas that looks at the columns that you've already created in your list and the types of data that you're collecting within those columns, and we make that template for you. With Nintex Workflow, it is a blank canvas because you are designing the business process as it relates to your business and that list and the data that you're trying to work with. So within here, we've got a couple of options. Up top, we've got the ability to import and export workflows, open up new workflows, close the designer canvas, create variables, connect to third-party connections through the Nintex store. And then also we can save, publish, and give ourselves the ability to work on these workflows at a later point without actually making them a major version and publishing it out for everyone to consume. On the left-hand side, we have our actions pane too. Our actions pane has some common actions that you already use or have been used predominantly within your environment, and then also are broken down into different sections such as Nintex Hawkeye, integration, logic and flow, provisioning, social, user interaction, or utility. Now, I can go and open up any of these sections to take a look at the actions nested within it, or if I want to work with it a little bit more quickly, just simply search for the action you want. For example, if I wanted to send an email, I'll just type email in the search bar and send an email will appear. Now, if I want to work with this action, I will select the action by clicking and holding over and then dragging that action onto the designer canvas. On that designer canvas, you've got the flow chart here, which will show you from top to bottom how the workflow will flow, but also these other white dots on here, which we call pearls. And so if you want to drag an action onto the canvas, you would drag it onto the pearl itself. And as you're seeing, as I hover over it, you see a circular icon appear over that to let you know what you're highlighting on. So for these actions, how you would configure these actions are one of two ways. You can click on the ellipsis and then choose configure, and that will show your configure screen. Or for a quicker method, just simply double click on the action itself, and that will bring open a modal window for you to apply the configuration settings. Each action will have different types of configuration settings to them, so be aware that these screens will change depending on the action type that you are configuring. So for example, I'll show you some quick tips though. If I want to go and send out an email, and I'll send it out to myself, and then maybe I want to put a subject of new workflow in this email, and then I want to send a body that just says hello world. All right, great. So I filled out the parameters within this action, but only the required ones, and the required fields are denoted by a red asterisk next to it. If I click on save, you'll see that I've got this action. Now, if I wanted to reuse this action, one of the great aspects of Nintex Workflow is the ability to copy this action. So I can simply click on the ellipsis, choose copy, click on the pearl that I want to add the action to, and click on paste. And that's going to bring over that action again as a copy with all the same configurations within it. And you can make any changes that are required. If I want to delete this action, simply click on the ellipsis again and click on delete. So as we take a look at this workflow, and you want to understand what action is going to kick off first, it's going to be the action closest to this green icon that denotes starting of the workflow. And then the actions located at the bottom, closer to the red icon for the end workflow status, will show where it's going to end. Now, depending on the business logic in which you set up using some of the logic and flow actions, it can end in other places for some complex looping strategies you may place within there, such as state machines or switches, and especially using the end workflow action. But simple rule of thumb is it's always going to start at top and it's going to end at the bottom, depending on how you've configured your workflow. So how does that workflow actually start? Well, that's a great question. And if we jump into settings, we can actually configure how that workflow starts, because starting events are extremely important. If I click on workflow settings, you'll see start options as the ability to configure. So we've got start manually. Now what start manually means is that you can go and click on the workflow itself by clicking on the ellipsis as it relates to that individual action and select the workflow and then choose to start that workflow. However, maybe we want to automate this a little bit more and we want to actually have workflows start when an item is created. To do that, you would choose start when items are created and enable that option. Now, this will start a workflow anytime a new item is created to that list. And that's good if that's what we want. However, what if we wanted to add a condition? And by condition, I mean if a title equals a certain value, or any of the column values equal a certain value, or a date has not been reached, or it exceeds a particular date when the item's been created. You can add those conditions in. So simply click on add a condition and then here denote the type of condition you want. And so you can have and or, so either one of these conditions equates to true or both of these conditions equate to true. So you can make a more granular reason for these workflows to execute. The other one that you can use is start when items are modified. So this will occur for existing items. Maybe you have a business process that goes through and you take an existing item and you update an item property of that. Maybe we went to the first name Sean item that we created earlier and we changed that first name item to Alistair. And if the condition is met that first name equals Alistair, then a second workflow takes off, or this workflow kicks off based on that condition, and that's how we would set that up within our workflow settings. So remember, we've got 3 types of start options. We can start manually, we can start when items are created, or we can start when items are modified. And that's how it works with list workflows.